But ladies and gentlemen, welcome to What's in My Head podcast. I'm joined by Sherran Johnson, storyboard artist for Ed and Eddy, The Busy World of Richard Scarry, both Addams Families, and so many other things dealing with My Little Pony. I'm your host, Julian. Sherran, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me on
Nope.
this podcast.
No problem. I got to say big thanks to Toomey because he kind of set this up for us, man. A lot of people loved his episode. Not very many people hit him on his Jaws knowledge because he was kind of bummed that he flubbed up on the date of his favorite movie. He messaged
Yeah.
me right after. He's like, "Shit, I messed it up." So I thought that was really funny. Um, but just getting right into it. And for you guys that don't know, she worked on a couple of the shows and TV movies that we just mentioned there, especially being the two big ones right now, Addams Family 1 and 2, Addams Family 2 coming out in just a little while. And I told you before, that was my son and I's last movie that we saw before COVID. Phenomenal movie. I loved it. It was so fun. I'd never laughed that hard in a movie theater in quite some time. So I'm really looking forward to the second one. But let's take a step back. When did you start noticing that you had a talent or an eye for drawing? Was it just at a little age somebody gave you some pens or crayons and stuff like that, or how'd you start?
Yeah. As soon as I could pick up a pen, I would start drawing. I drew from comics from the start, and then I would draw animals, every kind of animal that I would see, um, and yeah, I drew all the time. So I knew when I grew up that I wanted to do something with drawing. I didn't know exactly what it was until I got to art school, but yeah, ended up in animation. Loved
So
it.
what was it about animation that just specifically stuck to? Were there some cartoons that you absolutely loved, and that's what you would start drawing first? I know you said animals, but sticking to just the animation field for just a few minutes, what was it about animation or some of the shows that you might have just picked up on and wanted to start drawing from?
Well, Warner Brothers was a big one for
Mhm.
me. Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner and Coyote. I loved watching that. I would watch that with my grandpa, and he would always um, hope that the coyote would get the Roadrunner. So um, those were big ones back then. Of course, I had to. Cartoons weren't what they are today. I had to get up really early and watch
Mhm.
cartoons, or be home right at 4 o'clock to watch the afternoon cartoons after school. So it was a real commitment
Yeah.
watching cartoons back then. So
Yeah. It's funny, like whenever I have somebody that's roughly around the same age I am or grew up before streaming services you started kicking off, if you didn't have a VCR, and mind you, we had a VCR growing up, so we could we could pop in that blank cassette and record it. However, I made the mistake of recording over a few of my mom's shows and not realizing it until it started like skipping in between shows, and I'm seeing like, why is House recorded on here, or why is Monk recorded on here, or why is one of these Law and Order shows? And I'm like, holy shit, it scared the hell out of me because my mom was super upset when she found out, like, because once the shows were out, if you caught them in a year later in reruns, or you'd catch them, whenever they started doing reruns, 6 months, summertime, that type of things. So it's not as easy as it is these days to pop on your favorite show, your favorite episode. Back then, you either saw it or you
or
didn't.
you didn't, yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
it's just wild to sit there and think about that time before Netflix, Hulu, or any of the other streaming services. Um, and I absolutely love the Looney Tunes. I think that for most of us that really love animation, that was our first love, I guess, was Bugs Bunny or Daffy. Daffy was always my guy, and so was Foghorn. I loved those two. There's something about those two birds that I absolutely love, and I love seeing Foghorn just kicking around. And same thing with Daffy. But did you end up going to, what was it like in high school and middle school and stuff like that? Were you still trying to pursue drawing, or did you kind of give it up for a little bit and come back to
Um,
it? Or
yeah, in high school, I was always the artist,
Mhm.
the artist in the friend group, right? I
Yeah.
was always the one that could draw. People would ask me, "Can you draw me this?" or "Can you draw me that?"
Mhm.
And so I was, at the top of my game in high
Yeah.
school. But then, art school came along, and I was like not at the top of my game, and I had to, there was a lot of talented people out there, and that was the first time I sort of realized that, and I was like, holy cow, I have to work at
Yeah.
my craft now, and I have to really, I did a lot of learning in art school. It was great. It
Did,
wasn't terribly structured, but it was fun. It was
did
fun.
it feel like imposter syndrome when you got there? Did you feel like, oh man, did I make the wrong mistake? Or did you feel like, oh, this is just another challenge for me to step up to?
It art school, no, art school didn't feel like that. It felt fun, and
Yeah.
feel like a challenge. I got imposter syndrome when I started in the industry, and I really was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing, because art school back then wasn't as structured as it is now, especially for animation.
Mhm.
So I had to do a lot of learning on the job, which was good,
Yeah.
healthy, and I still am learning, so that's good.
Yeah, it is. Whenever you feel, I can't remember who made that quote, but the day you stop learning is the day you stop growing. Something along those lines. I'm pretty sure I butchered that quote, man. But if you're not learning, you're not trying. If you're not learning, you're not progressing. If you're not progressing, you're stagnant. If you're stagnant, what the hell are you doing, right? You always want to progress. You
Exactly.
always want to be better. You always want to say, oh man, I kind of messed up those things. Like, I used to draw when I was younger, nothing very good, but I like to draw like Dragon Ball Z characters and my favorite cartoons and stuff like that. And the hardest thing for me specifically were fingers, right? I don't know what it was. Like, I would sit there and see people and they would draw their hands, or they would hold their hand in a certain thing and they would draw it. I tried it, horrible, right? I just could not get it. My fingers always looked like blocks. But what were some of the things that for you specifically that were like just difficult to really master, or difficult to really just get in there and do?
Well, when I started in the industry, I started in Montreal. I moved away from Vancouver because there wasn't a lot of work in Vancouver at the time. And I started on Robert Munch. I worked on that.
Mhm.
Things like bicycles were really hard. Or vehicles. I hated drawing structured things. I could do organic things easily enough, characters. I loved expressions and all of that stuff. But yeah, bikes are very hard. Anything with structure.
It,
Buildings, houses, backgrounds,
it's
very
funny you
hard.
bring up bikes because I had Scotty on here, old Scott Underwood,
Yeah.
and I was asking him like, what was the hardest thing for you to draw during Edit and Eddy, and he was like, dude, Kevin's bike absolutely sucked, man. I was like, a bike, really? And he was like,
Yeah.
and I couldn't understand why. And he started explaining it to me. I was like, I still don't understand why it was so hard. And then he sent me some pictures, and he was like, I don't think I made each, like every time I had to draw Kevin on his bike or Kevin's bike, it was different every single time. He was like, there was something about bikes, the handlebars, the wheels. He was like, I don't know what it was. And I was like, I mean, I kind of get it. I never saw it, when I was a kid watching. I'm like, oh, that bike looks different. I wonder what was going on here. So I guess you notice it once you do it, or if you're the guy that or girl that does this, you're like, oh man, I see the imperfections in there. I see what I could have been better. But before we get into Ed and Eddy, one of my favorite shows as a child was The Busy World of Richard Scarry. I loved it. There was something about the art style, the colors. I don't know what it was, but it was phenomenal. What was it like getting this call? Because some of you guys have managers, or you got agents that kind of say, "Hey, try out for this." But back in the day, how would you get word of a show, or how would you get onto a show?
Uh, well, there wasn't a lot of studios back then. It was sort of a newer industry.
Yeah.
And one of my old teachers actually was a producer out there. And so when I moved out there, either she called me up or I called her, and she got me in. So I was lucky. I was fortunate because it's not always easy getting your foot in the door the first time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
I've
not
I've,
easy
I've
to
found
get.
that out the hard way. So it's once you all you need for me specifically, all I need is somebody just to creep the door a little bit, and I'll kick that
Yeah,
fucker in, no problem. Let
yeah.
me
Then you
get me
prove
to the
yourself,
dance,
right?
and I can't dance, but get me to the dance, and I'll make something happen, right? So it's always fun. What was that person's name? That way we can give them a shout out.
Um, oh, good Lord, I can't.
Uh
Um,
oh.
I can't remember. Appleton was her last name. She's no longer with us.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yeah,
sorry to hear that,
yeah,
but I'm
yeah,
glad she at least got you in there, because now we're talking, and you got to work on one of the greatest shows of all time. Not so much specifically the Busy World of Richard Scare, which I absolutely love, but the one that everybody really loves. That makes it sound like I'm shitting on the Busy World of Richard Scare, which I'm really not. I love the Busy World of Richard Scare. However, Ed and Eddy, if the two are on, and I'm like, which one am I going to watch? The Ed boys are going to win every single time. So that wasn't a slight towards that cartoon. I absolutely love that cartoon. So was it jumping from Richard Scarry to Ed and Eddy, or did you have some work in between those two?
No, I lived in Montreal for 6.5 years, and so I did Little Lulu. I did character design for that for
Mhm.
3 years. They did development on that. They tried to make her modern
Yeah.
for a long. I did design on that for a year, and nothing happened with it for redrew the characters, updating them, this outfit or that outfit or whatever. And then it was Richard Scarry, and then we did Arthur for a while. And then I did commercial work in Montreal, just for laughs kind of stuff. And that was fun. It was very different kind of work because it's a lot faster paced. You have 3 weeks on a project and then something else. And then from there, I moved back to Vancouver. I had my baby. So.
Yeah. Boy, girl?
Girl.
Girl? Nice.
Girl. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I moved back to Vancouver, and Montreal would send me sheet direction work. And it's no longer a thing anymore, but it's sheet timing.
Yeah.
Basically. And I did that for several years, and I did it for different companies around town as well. And then I did it for Danny as well, and that's how I found out about the Eds.
Can you go a little bit into detail? Now, I don't know if you know him. I feel like everybody does because he's been in the industry for so long. But you know Robert Alvarez?
Not terribly, no.
Okay, yeah, he's just worked on a whole bunch of shows, and he didn't work specifically on Ed, Edd and Eddy, but he was with Hanna-Barbera during that time with with like Billy and Mandy and Samurai Jack and Cow and Chicken and all just the cartoon renaissance for me specifically, like my age of cartoons during that entire, I want to say like 95, 96, almost all the way up to 2007, 8 is when everything was hot and heavy at Cartoon Network / Hanna-Barbera. And he got a little nerdy with us, which I absolutely love. I love seeing how the sausage is made for this. But could you go into detail about timing? Because that's one thing I didn't bring up with him, but I would love to know more. And there's a lot of fans always ask something about timing. We had a slugging comment come up last time, so Robert went deep in that. But what is timing, and how do you get into that, or how do you do that?
Well, you get the boards, you get the storyboards, and you usually get the track, the dialogue track. And I would do the dial as well. And so there's different codes for each mouth shape, like ooh, it's a D mouth or whatever, various shapes, usually 8 to 12 different shapes. So you would code out that on one side of the sheets, every different mouth shape. And on the other side, you do all the acting. So it's just big, long strips of paper. And you break down the storyboard. This is for this panel, that panel, that panel. And then you just break all the acting down, everything. So somebody, one of the Eds picks up a cup. So that's an acting moment. Takes a drink, takes a sip, another one. So you break everything down. Blinks, picks up the cup, blinks. You've got to pose that out. Walk cycles are another thing. Everything is broken down. So it just looks like, I wish I had some samples. It just looks like a mess of lines and scratches and teeny drawings and teeny little notes. Yeah. Pages and pages of it. And then the animator gets it from there and animates everything. So how is that specifically? Because we talked about a few things, and it's always fun talking to the artists because you find out like what people specifically like. Like when I had Chris Battles on, he loved character design. That's all he wanted to do, and he's a character designer. There's some people that absolutely just love doing backgrounds, and there's some people that just like doing different things. But I've heard you doing a few different things here. You started out as animating, and then doing timing, and doing this, and then doing that. What do you specifically gravitate towards the most? What do you enjoy doing the most as far as the animation field goes? Well, I liked everything because it was a learning progression for me. And it always surprised me when people get out of school and then just kind of jump right into storyboarding, because I always, maybe it's just the way it happened for me, but I feel like it's important to learn all the different aspects and grow in your career towards that point. Because every point of my career has been interesting to me because of the learning curve. Yeah, I love storyboarding now because it's the most challenging of all.
Is it still so? As you get, what's the word I'm looking for here? Because it's not, I guess proficient is the right word. I don't want to use that because it makes it sound like you weren't before. But as you get better and better and more proficient and you start to master your craft, do bad days come? And I asked this to Big Jim, but do bad days come as frequently as you get, deeper into your career? For you specifically, I obviously can't talk for every artist, but do bad days, as far as like trying to pick something up or trying to get something down or trying to get the right angle or the right pose, do does that still happen as frequently, or does it happen less now for you?
It happens. It happens less
Yeah.
frequently, but every different job that I do is a challenge.
Hmm.
So it happens all over again. A new production, a new director, um, a new style of drawing.
Hmm.
Then the awkward drawings come back until I get the rhythm of the show,
Hmm.
and then it gets easy again.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it happens less frequently. There are bad days if I've had a bad sleep or whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah, you just can't draw.
Yeah.
Just, you have the awkward days, of course. So yeah,
What,
and imposter syndrome. That's a big one.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do to warm up? Because I know some people, they'll do warm up sketches, but what do you specifically do to warm up or get in the mood to draw and stuff like that?
I yeah, I doodle. I fool around. It takes me forever to get going. It's not until the afternoon that I really
Hmm.
get going,
Yeah.
basically. So
Do you like
yeah,
a quiet room, or do you like background music, movies and stuff like that? What do you like to
I
do?
like noise. I
Yeah.
like a lot of noise and busyness, unless I'm doing thumbnails,
Hmm.
which is the first part of setting the storyboard down, the thinking stuff, then I need absolute quiet.
Yeah.
But generally, when I'm boarding, I prefer noise. And I think I got that from working at AKA.
Oh, 100%. Because I was hoping you were gonna, because there was only one
Yeah,
person that answered, and I don't know if you worked directly with them. I'm pretty sure you got to see him at the Christmas parties and everything like that. But Jono is one of my favorite people I've ever gotten the chance to talk to. He is the sweetest
yeah,
person
he's
I've ever
lovely.
met, or not physically met, but met, like we're talking now. One of the
Yeah,
sweetest people I've ever met, one of the most humble people. Whenever I give him praise, he's like, thanks, man. He's like, I just did that, right? So I love Jono, but I was like, you don't seem like everybody else. And what I mean by that, I was like, you don't seem like you're just sitting there just blaring music. He's like, no, it was crazy. He was like, I would try to find places and lock myself into closets or lock myself into rooms away from everybody, because he's like, I need peace and quiet. And I was like, well, how is it like working that with everybody's a punk rocker? Big Jim's beating the shit out of radios and Joel's in there stomping on it. I was like, what was that like? And he was like, it was the wildest time of my life, the coolest time of my life, the most chaotic time of my life. And we did some really, really cool stuff.
distracting. Yeah.
So when when you get to AKA, what show did you come from again? Excuse me, before you got to Edit and Eddy?
Uh, oh yeah, you had asked me that before to send you my IMDb. I worked on Silverwing and Dragons.
Okay.
And what else? Paddington Bear. There was just so many shows that I did sheet timing for as well.
How big of a culture shock was it when you got to AKA? What was the first day? I got to imagine you remember the first day of AKA. Do you remember the first day
Yeah,
of AKA Studios?
I I do. It was fun. Of course I was a little bit familiar with it
Mhm.
because I had done sheets for Danny.
Yeah.
So I had gone in and met them before. Um, but it was great. I felt like the island of misfit toys. I finally belonged. So it felt like I finally belonged, basically.
That's cool,
So
man. I really like
I
that.
found my people.
Yeah. Everybody
Yeah,
says that. It's I want to see somebody. And I hate saying this, because as soon as my tech guy watches this video and he starts doing all this stuff, he's like, maybe you should write it. Because he keeps trying to get me to write a book about something. Nobody wants to hear what I want to write. I can't write
yeah,
half
they
the time.
do.
It just looks like shit. But he was like, you should really do one on the Ed Boys. And I'm like, yeah, but I'd have to have like open access to everybody. It'd have to be one of those things. And I've had a lot of you guys on, but there's just a few people, Danny specifically, that I just don't know if he'll come on and do something like this. Um, but it's something that I would love to know, just the minutia or the minute details on the day to day of what AKA was going on. So we've heard some of the stories, we've been told some of the stories, and I've had to cut some of those stories out. What is your favorite Christmas story or Christmas party? Do you remember going to those? Do you have
Yeah,
do you have one that's your
yeah.
Now, and if you can't say a story, what's your favorite AKA Christmas gift? Because I've seen a few of those, and some of them are really good.
Um, well, there was the paddle, the spanking paddle.
Yeah.
I think Jono brought that out. There was the yo-yo one year, and I think I was doing sheets at the time, so I kind of didn't get the joke. I was like, I want cash. Where's the cash? So I didn't quite get the joke. I can't remember the other ones, but yeah, they were pretty unique Christmas gifts.
Yeah, it's always funny when they break them out. When I had Jono on there, I think he showed me a bottled liquor
Yeah, I
break-in
didn't.
case of something I can't remember. There's another one that said "fuck digital art" that Danny had. He made pins and T-shirts.
Oh
And,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then when I had all three of the Ed boys on, I had all three of the voice actors. I think it was Tony that brought it up, and he was like, "Yeah, Danny gave us all AKA condoms." And he was like, "I
yeah.
was wondering why I had kids right after that." He's like, "So I think Danny poked holes into them." And I thought it was the funniest shit in the world. But going back to that first day of AKA Studios, you'd done some timing and stuff. But when you started boarding for them, what was that like? Because I'm assuming that's a huge jump from timing to storyboarding, because you said it was a little bit more challenging to do storyboards.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Do you
The
remember the
eds,
first
the
couple
eds were,
storyboards?
yeah, the eds were very hard for me to
Hmm.
draw. Very, very difficult because all the other shows I've worked on, Munch and Arthur and Little Luke, the structures of the characters were very, very stiff and very the same, very set. But the Ed's characters, their faces moved. Like when they did an expression, they were the same character, but it was phenomenal how far you could push their expressions, and I was not used to that, so I really had to relearn
Yeah.
how to draw again. So, and
How,
they were the artists there were just phenomenal. Everybody was just so talented. We learned off of each other all the time.
how long did it take you to feel comfortable with the Eds, drawing them and getting used to them?
I don't know if I ever did. It was always a challenge for me. It was always a challenge.
Was there one character that sticks out the most that was very difficult to get down?
Double D was very hard for me.
Really? How come? Do
Yeah,
you remember?
double, because his face structure
Yeah.
was just so wacky. It's so ever changing. Um, yeah, he was, I think, probably the hardest for me to draw.
So this one's come up, and I didn't know that this question existed because when I watched Ed and Eddy, I didn't give a shit about what was under Double D's hat. So I got to imagine you've had that question asked. And the only reason
Yeah,
I like asking this one is because everybody gives a different answer, and it's usually the same. He's like, "There's nothing going to be under there." He's like, "It's undefined." Danny didn't really have one,
yeah.
but one of my favorite ones, and I'm not going to say it on here. If you want to hear it, just go listen like the first 15 minutes of all three Ed Boys, and they'll tell you exactly what Tony thought was under Double D's hat. But if you had to choose, or if you could choose, what would you put under Double D's hat? Like I said, that question always comes up, and I like asking the storyboard artists.
Yeah, I don't know. It, probably no hair.
No hair,
Yeah, probably
just give him a
no
chrome
hair.
dome.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, Danny never wanted anybody to know, right?
That's what I love
So
hearing. I love
yeah,
hearing there's something that's still so close to the best, and you always want to leave them wanting more or knowing why by
yeah,
giving it to them, because it's something about that mystique that just continually builds the myth, the legend, and all that other stuff. So, like I said, I always like
totally.
asking that question.
Yeah.
Um, who was some of your favorite characters to draw? Then I know you said Double D was very difficult. Was there one that stuck out that you just absolutely loved?
I love drawing the Kinkers
Yeah.
because I felt they had a lot of personality
Hmm.
for female characters. I mean, I'm always vying for the female characters, of course, and at the time, I don't think girl characters had a lot of representation.
Hmm.
So Danny's show was unique, and what I mean by representation is that they actually had personality and
Yeah.
not just were cutesy
Hmm.
female characters. So I really, really dug that about the Kinkers. They were just weird,
Yeah.
weird and all out, like vile sometimes. And I was like, that's real life. That's hilarious.
Yeah, they were for sure the
It's not
kids in
that.
high school that smoked cigarettes in between classes out by the portables and shit, you know. So it
Yeah.
was it was interesting because I got to talk to Erin Fitzgerald. She did May, and she did the
Oh
voice of
yeah.
Naz not too long ago, and she said the same thing. She's like, there was just so much about them. She's like, Naz was very one dimensional. She was very plain Jane, and then she was a skater chick, and then she turned to a cheerleader, and then she was like, she's like, I had to have words with Danny. I was like, you took my skater chick and you turned her into a cheerleader, and then he was like, he broke it down for her, and the way she explained it was, she was like, yeah, I have to have these characters represent the girls that were the girls that I grew up with. Every character has meaning to it, and every character was somebody I experienced as a child. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, wow, I wonder what three girls were after Danny when Danny was
Yeah.
coming up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So,
Danny nailed it.
yeah, I mean, like I said, the Kanker sisters are just so they break so many dimensions because they're so fun, they're so crazy, they're so wild, and then you like, man, are these girls really 12, 13, and 14, or however old they were? Because they seemed so much older because of the shit they were doing, and they were
Mm,
just whenever they were on screen, I always got a big kick out of it because everybody knows, either whether you're a girl or a boy, everybody knows that group of boys, they're like the Kankers, or the group of girls, they're like the Kankers, and it just sticks to you, right?
yeah.
um,
Yeah. We had a neighborhood gang in our group, so
yeah.
we were. I think my gang was the Cankers. So growing up, so
That's
I can
awesome.
relate.
When you started storyboarding, and I brought this up because the post-it notes are always my favorite, right? Some of the favorite stories I've ever heard was having Big Jim retell some of the because he was like it was getting that story from your dad. It was like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed in you type of thing. And he's like, that cuts so much deeper on some of these post-it notes I get. And you said they were quite nice, right? But
He was very
do you remember any
gentle.
post-it notes specifically?
I don't specifically, but I mean, he would write nice if I'd
Yeah.
done a good job, of course. But I do remember one of our meetings because he would sit down with us before we did the big pitch and go
Yeah.
over our thumbnails. And it was when I was just starting. Um, and I pitched him my thumbnails, and I think it was Scott was sitting beside me as I did my pitch to Danny. And I finished, and I thought, oh, okay, I did a good job. And then I looked at Danny, and then he just turned to Scott and looked at him because Scott was in charge of me, basically.
Yeah.
He just did this super disappointed, and I was like, oh, I guess I didn't do very well. But he that's good. I mean, I needed that to
Yeah.
step up. I definitely needed that to step up and improve my game. Um, so I definitely knew and felt his disappointment, and that was just worse than any
Yes.
post-it note. You know, disappointment is the worst for me. Um, and it made me work harder. It made me do much better. So he was good for that. He had a strong sense of integrity,
Hmm.
and he expected us to do it, you know, do a good job, push ourselves in
Yeah.
every way,
Yeah.
not
Because
just drawing wise, but comedy,
mhm.
acting, everything.
What was so big? What was it specifically when you would storyboard? Would you start with an ending and work yourself back? Because I know this was not a scripted show. They would have lines of dialogue and stuff like that. So it wasn't a in-depth script on you got to get here to get here to get here. But you specifically, what would you do whenever you would pitch an idea or come up with an idea? Would you start at the ending of an episode, work your way back, or would you start, with an issue and then build on that? How is it for your process?
Um, well, when we started on the Eds, we had scripts.
Okay.
So we would get our section,
Hmm.
and I myself, the way I board, I find a part in that that inspires me,
Hmm.
and I just start drawing from that, and then I move backwards or forwards from there. So I sort of pick the most interesting spot, start at that, and then fill in the spaces everywhere else. Sometimes I start from the beginning and just go straight ahead if it seems like a straight ahead kind of section. But generally, I go from inspiration to inspiration.
And how long would an episode take you, I guess, to flush out for storyboards? That's something I never really asked any of the other artists because it was something like, damn it, I wish I would have asked them during it. And then I usually just message them after if I ever have any questions. You guys have always been so great because everybody answers it. But how long would an episode take you to storyboard?
I think we would get like, there's usually 3 board artists,
Mhm.
two juniors and a senior. I was a junior at the time. And I think we would get 3 weeks to thumbnail to do the super rough stuff, 3 or 4 weeks. And then Danny would have a look at that. And then we'd get another 4 weeks to clean up and tighten everything. So usually probably 8 to 9 weeks we would get total.
Now, are you guys?
Sometimes it would take more than that.
Yeah. I know that and I didn't realize it until after I started talking to you guys because everybody was like, yeah, there's a lot of times where Danny had to come money out of his pocket because you guys were behind because he wanted perfection. He wanted everything to mean something. He didn't want bullshit. And I absolutely love that about something. There's so many people that would just fold and say, you know, it's good enough, just push it out there. But for him specifically, that's why I have so much respect for Danny is because he'll sit there and he's like, no, it's not good enough. I want something better. If this is good enough, go find a different studio to work in because you obviously don't want to push. But when you're storyboarding these out, are you specifically working on only one episode at a time, or are you working on a bunch of different episodes?
No, we would get one episode at a time per team. So we'd have the senior. Big Jim was my senior at one point, and 2 juniors. So yeah, we would be a team. When I was working with Big Jim, it was called Team Vagina. Big Jim, Sabrina, and myself. So we were all basically the vaginas of the room.
Oh, please tell me you guys made team shirts or you guys had bowling.
No, we didn't. That would have been a good idea.
Oh man, I mean, it's almost Christmas time, so you could bring back Team Vagina and put those on T-shirts, right?
A reunion.
Might be a good Christmas gift there.
Yeah.
That's who came up with the name? Was it Big Jim?
I probably.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
That dude is a national treasure. I love talking to him. He's such a good dude. Yeah. Now, as you guys are starting to go from these storyboards and into the TV series, you guys ended up doing a movie because Danny got the option to either do one more season or do a movie, wrap it up the way he did. And, you know, after talking to a few people, not just specifically Ed and Eddy, but a bunch of other guys that were working on television shows during that time when the whole shift came with Stuart Snyder coming in and then everything started getting away from cartoons and they wanted to do more live action. Danny just saw the writing on the wall. He's like, this, if we go any longer, I'm not going to be able to do what I'm going to do because they were shaking up the executives and the producers and all this other stuff. So he saw, like I said, the writing on the wall. And then you guys start boarding for the movie. You guys start working on the movie. Was that something that you guys found out way ahead of time? Like, hey, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to finish it with, you know, this season. Then we're going to go into a movie. Or was that something that came down, I guess, a little bit later? Do you remember?
I don't remember how that worked. I just know that I continued working. There was some development time, I do remember that, where we were just drawing inspiration, thoughts, ideas. So I guess there was a little bit of downtime, but I don't, honestly, I don't remember.
Now, was something like a movie, and because obviously, you know, you guys said you had teams, right? There was Team Vagina. What were the other team names? Did they get team names, or were you guys the only cool one?
I don't remember. I just remember ours.
Yeah. Yeah. That's phenomenal. You'll think about it as soon as we get off the phone.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the way it usually happens. So obviously you guys have teams for specific episodes, but with something like a movie or something that has like no 22 minutes, it's a 90-minute movie or whatever it is. How does that work? Is all the board artists working on this together, or is it still picking and choosing here and there? How does that work out?
I do remember there would be some brainstorming times, and artists started to wrap up at the time too. I think it wasn't all of us that stayed at that point. Sorry, I can't remember.
No,
honestly.
it was fine.
I do remember we were all together at first, and it was the brainstorming that had to happen. And I'm yeah, I'm sure we picked sections after that because you have to. You can't all be working on the same stuff. But
Yeah.
it was very collaborative all the time. Like everything was always collaborative when we were doing the shows as well. You know, we would talk to other artists, other teams, and we would try to get ideas from one another. If we were stuck on a section,
Yeah.
we would just talk to somebody else, and just by talking about it, that would trigger ideas in ourselves or in them to help out. But yeah, it was a very collaborative experience all the time.
So when that show ends with that movie, I mean, I got to imagine, like, as you guys are working on it and you guys are finishing the movie, or you guys have done what you guys do, and then you send it off to the next step of the movie or the television process.
Yeah.
Was there a change? And the only reason I haven't gotten to ask any of the other guys and gals that have worked on this yet, but was there a shift? I guess, did it feel weird, you know, at the end when you guys finished everything and sent it off, and you know, you essentially did the whole Cheers thing where you turn the lights off and then everybody goes home. What was that like? I mean, what was that? Was it a weird feeling, I guess, for everybody?
It was super sad. I stuck around for a little bit because I was doing sheets.
Yeah.
I helped out with sheets with Marlene. She's another one that you should get on.
Okay.
She is just, she did sheet direction for years. She worked on Scooby-Doo.
Okay.
Marlene May. So I helped out with that stuff later. So I sort of stuck around a little bit a while longer, but yeah, it was sad, right?
Yeah.
Because we'd been there for so long, and everybody was so close. Like it felt like we went through war together. Yeah. Like it was. Oh, I mean, I hate to compare that because you actually did do that, but
I was just a Navy guy. I wasn't boots on ground. I was on a ship. You know, the worst thing that ever happened when I was in there, other than getting hurt, the worst thing that I ever saw happen, we were in Dubai and a car bomb went off about 200 yards away from us. It was in the middle of an abandoned like parking lot, and a car bomb went off. That was the worst thing I saw. I mean, I saw people get hurt and shit like that. I saw a few people fall overboard. That was essentially, and they rescued those people. It wasn't anything crazy. But that was the worst thing I saw. I wasn't in the desert. I didn't get shot at, you know, thankfully. There were so many of my friends that did. Few of them aren't here anymore. But no, I 100%, when you're in the trenches, whether it's wartime or you're in the trenches at McDonald's making fries, you guys have a collective bond because you guys are experiencing the suck together. You're experiencing the good, you're experiencing the bad. So you're a lot tighter than somebody else. And I didn't realize this when they told us this in boot camp. When they say when you're in boot camp, and for the most part it was true because there was a few people that I still in contact with, but you'll be closer to these people than anybody you grew up with because you're experiencing something that not everybody gets to experience. And you guys go through that as well. You guys are sitting there, and I don't know what time you clock in and what time you clock out, but I got to imagine during all of this crazy shit, you guys were working pretty hot and heavy. There was no such thing as set hours. Everybody worked whatever hours it was just to get the project done because it's what you guys have to do. You guys have to do a schedule. So 100% I agree with you. You guys were in a war too. You guys were in the trenches. It might not have bullets flying at you just yet, but I'm pretty sure there was some crazy shit going on at AKA that might have felt like, oh shit, we're in Vietnam right now. This shit is crazy. So yeah, I 100% agree with you on that one. So as we end Ed, and Eddy, and we're going to go into Addams Family, and then we'll wrap up. But what are some of the greatest things or best things that you learned, or what are some of the things that set you up for a career in animation that you learned from AKA?
Definitely to think more. Danny really taught us to think and to push our ideas further than just the first idea that came into our head. And collaboration. And integrity. Danny was really good for his sense of integrity. But I think those were probably the most important things that we learned.
Yeah.
The collaboration thing is a big one. Yeah. And a lot of artists now coming out of school, it's sorry, something's happening.
Oh, you're fine.
Computer. They don't. People do the first thought that comes out of their head when they're boarding. It's very standard stuff. So we have to sort of, we try to teach the new artists to push it further
Yeah.
when they're doing shows.
That's a good thought. You've got to train your replacement, right? You got to train and make sure the next wave of animators are going to have, not maybe the same outlook or thought on something, because you want different perspectives. That's why you want a male's perspective, a female's perspective, somebody that comes from a different country or speaks a different language, because we're all watching the same thing, but we're all picking different things from it. Because when you start sitting here and you start seeing the same stories from the same style of people, everything gets boring. Right? When we start seeing new in something, that's when we start latching on, like, oh shit, they're doing something here. This isn't cookie cutter stuff. So it's 100%, man. What you learn in school is one thing, but what you actually learn once you get a job, you can essentially not throw everything out that you learned in school, but you'll learn how to do what you're supposed to do when you get on the job. So it's nice to see that yes, you're getting a new wave of animators, but you're also giving them the freedom, right, to explore and to invent and try something new. Don't do the same thing that you learned in a book, because there's 17 other students that you came up with that are going to do the same thing. So, try something, get out there and expand, get out there and just try to do something different, right? So as we finish Ed, Edd, and Eddy, right, and we move on to Addams Family, I told you before we started that this was the last movie, the first one, that my son and I went and seen in theaters. And that's our thing that we get to do. I love being able to take my oldest son and go to the movie theaters. During COVID, we haven't been to one since, this one dropped in 2019. So I think we saw this December 2019, January 2020 is when we saw it, because it was just so busy with work and everything. But yeah, this is right before the shutdown when we went and seen this movie. I absolutely loved the Addams Family. It was so fun. And you got to work with Toomey again, and I think was Scott working on this one as well.
Yeah.
What was that one? What was it like seeing everybody?
I mean, I worked with powerhouses. Todd DeMong was another one. Just amazingly talented. Meat Stick is another one. He worked at AKA as well. Super talented guy. Dave Dick, Solomon Fong. They're just, I got to work with so many talented artists. Once again, it was great, and a challenge again. And it was a feature. So this was my first feature, basically. Really? I mean, besides the Ed, Edd, and Eddy feature.
What was it? I mean, when you get the call, or did you, whenever you get a new job or you see something like this is on, obviously you had the producer, I think you said Mrs. Applebottom, right? Or Miss
Appleton.
Appleton.
Hazel Appleton.
Okay. You get the word from her to say, hey, go, try out for this one type of thing, and it kind of opens the door for you. Is this the same sense? Is it one of these guys that you work with from AKA?
Yeah, I think, Toomey was encouraging me to do it, because we were both working on My Little Pony at the time, and he was like, you should try out for it. And then the butterflies hit. Yeah. And I was like, okay. And then when that happens, that's what you have to do, basically. And so I applied, and I waited, and I just felt sick to my stomach. Yeah. And then I finally got the call to go in and meet with them, and I just I felt sick to my stomach, but I've always found when I feel that's the direction that I have to go, and luckily I got in. So
when you apply, do you apply and then you send kind of like a portfolio, or do you have to draw some of these characters? Like you oh shit, I got to draw Gomez, or I got to draw Fester, I got to draw this. Like, what is the applying process for? Or what does the applying process mean?
I just sent my old samples portfolio, but sometimes you have to do that. For the Ed's show, I had to do a test, basically.
You remember what the test was for you specifically?
It was Ed chewing some bubble gum, and then he swallows it, and then I think he farts, and then the bubble gum comes out his butt, and he floats up into the air over the town. I think that's the version that I did. It was just bizarre. But they hired me because of that.
Was that your idea to come up with it, or did they tell you like, hey, we want to see you do this?
It was my idea to fart the bubble gum balloon. So
that's phenomenal.
Luckily it worked.
Oh, I'm pretty sure they got a real big kick out of it. I can only imagine. I know I got a kick out of it. Now, for the Addams Family, what was the, I don't want to say the hardest thing, because we already asked what the hardest thing for the Eds was the bicycles and stuff like that, and background stuff. But what was the yeah, I mean, I guess what was the adversity you kind of had to overcome in going into a feature, Vice, coming from, cartooning My Little Pony and Ed and Eddy? What was the biggest thing that you kind of had to get to when you got to the feature length film of the Addams Family?
Well, you get to a point in your career where you're kind of comfortable. I mean, I know every job is a challenge,
Yeah.
I've mentioned before, but when I jumped into feature, I was very out of my comfort zone
Yeah.
again. And so keeping up with these really amazing artists, that was the biggest challenge for me. Getting up to speed, to their speed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was
Yeah.
just because they're phenomenal artists. So I had to try to be somewhat that as well.
No. What was some of the scenes in the first movie? Obviously, we can't talk too much about the second one, but what were some of the scenes in the first ones that you did specifically that you absolutely loved? And then what were some of the ones that some of the artists did that you absolutely loved during this movie?
I did the gate scene.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I did the gate scene. I did the scene, the butterfly clip, or
Okay.
the unicorn clip, and Mom freaks out. The other scenes, I loved Solomon's scene where Pugsley's on the rocket.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he's just fantastic artist. He does the 3D flying camera moves. Yeah. That I find challenging to do. But Solomon is just second nature to doing that kind of thing. Todd DeMong as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest challenge for me, going from My Little Pony, which was, Flash, to 3D and the flying camera stuff, learning how to board that way. I mean, I did a little bit of that because I did Puss in Boots as well. So there was some of that stuff with that. Yeah, so many. The end stuff. Scott did the chaos at the end. That was pretty good. Todd DeMong's art, just anything he did was wonderful.
Yeah, it was a very fun movie. We really enjoyed it, and then I loved the scene at the end where they're all trying to take over the Addams family, and so the Addams family, right, the whole family it's essentially war, right? So they're Pugsley's shooting off these bombs, and I can't remember the name that they had for the Addams family tradition where Pugsley becomes a man. I can't remember that term for some reason. But he just these just bombs and all these other stuff, and it was just so silly, and so I'm like, oh man, this is so fun. He's just trying to blow up Fester every chance he gets. It was just, I don't know what it was just so whimsical. It was so fun. It was like, it felt like I was a kid watching the Addams Family again. And I'm hoping, since the Addams Family had gotten such great reviews and it was a smash when we were watching it, that maybe you guys would do a Munsters. I mean, we talked briefly about that, but is there any chance that you, Toomey, and Scott can make that happen, make a Munsters happen?
Well, we'll see. Whoever gets it, yeah.
Yeah. What were you watching? Were you more of an Addams Family or more of a Munsters person back in the day?
I was Addams Family. I used to watch the live Addams Family.
Yeah.
I love that kind of stuff. But yeah, like I said, we just had cable TV, and where I lived at one point, I think we had 2 channels, and one of them was just snow. So we would watch whatever was on. So
yeah, it's definitely wild to see how far TV's come, and it's funny. I bought I like going to the thrift stores because that's when I'll find a lot of comic books, or I'll find a lot of books and stuff like that. And I saw a VHS of the original Ninja Turtles movie from 1990. And I bought it. I was like, I haven't had this since I was a little kid. I don't even have a VCR anymore, right? But I remember years back buying VHSs and popping them in, and somebody had recorded over movies, and then it was a whole bunch of the old commercials. Like usually today I can't wait for the commercials to end, but I just sat there and fast forwarded through everything they recorded just so I can watch the commercials from the 90s. It's so phenomenal just going
Yeah.
back and like seeing how far, not specifically so much animation, but like how far commercials and marketing and television shows and movies and all that other stuff has come since those early days of TV and shit like that. So it's really cool to see that.
Mhm.
But I told you I wouldn't ask you too much about Addams Family 2, but is there anything that you can talk about that you're allowed to speak on? Either working for it, doing this, what was this experience like for Addams Family 2? Was it fun? Was it tapping back into the well, or was it another learning curve for you?
It was another learning curve for me because I um, got the supervised storyboard for this.
Okay.
So it was a learning curve in that way that I had to learn to work with artists and try to get the best out of
Mhm.
them. And I loved it. I love working with artists. I get super inspired
Mhm.
working with artists and new artists and young artists as well. So for me, that was the biggest learning curve. It was a very tight schedule. So we had a lot of artists in short period of time to try
Yeah.
to get them to get this movie out. And a lot of the artists did not ever work on feature before.
Yeah.
So I was very proud of what everybody did.
Now, how many people are in a traditional team for something like this? For you specifically in the Addams Family Part 2, when you're starting to be in that supervisory role, how many people do you have up underneath you for storyboards?
I think we had 19 or 20 artists at, altogether at one point,
For the
maybe
whole
more.
movie, or just your team?
Oh no, just for my team, for
Oh,
the
I was about to say
storyboarding team.
that's a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's quite a few for a
Mhm.
storyboarding team. Comparing that to last time, we had less artists, but a longer period of time. I think we had 9 or 11 artists for the first one.
That's insane.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah. It was challenging.
so was this the first time you were put into a supervisor's role?
No, I had done it before for My Little Pony.
Okay.
But yeah, and I taught at art school before. I'd done a bit of teaching.
Okay.
But yeah, it was very challenging.
What's that like trying to corral 20 people, like 20 personalities? And especially since the only reason I bring this up is because what you do for a living is a very creative endeavor. Like a lot of people think what they do is not so much that it's the best or better than somebody else, but they essentially wear their heart, they're putting their emotions, their soul into something, and they want to get past. So what is it like trying to kind of like corral 20 people in and trying to make sure that everybody has the same focus? How difficult is that? And what were some of your strengths and weaknesses while doing that you saw?
Well, my strengths were that I had two amazing leads,
Mhm.
um, to me and Dave
Okay.
Dick. They were amazing, and of course, when we started, we went right into the pandemic.
Yeah.
So we had to do the work from home. Our team was the first team to do the work from home situation. So not only were we starting with a brand new team, brand new artists, but we had to figure out this work from home situation. So that was really hard ramping
Yeah.
up for that. But the studio was amazing. IT was amazing.
Mhm.
Figuring all that stuff out, it blows my mind
Yeah.
how they did all of that. But you know, we had to make sure everybody was healthy through this whole thing because working from home also is very isolating. So we had to do a lot of meetings and collaboration
Mhm.
in that way, online.
Yeah.
Um, I yeah, I had to. We had to do a lot of checkups on
Mhm.
people to make sure that they uh, got the right info and were working in the right direction and stuff. Everybody was great, and production was great too. We had a great production girl that was making sure everybody's deadlines were hit and
Yeah.
reminding us of when that was and everything.
Now, when you are in the
valuable,
role,
key.
what's that?
Sorry?
No, go ahead.
People, a good team is key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%, man. If you don't got the right people in the right place, shit'll go downhill real quick.
Yeah.
When you're in this role, are you doing any? Now, obviously, you guys don't do pencil to paper anymore. Everything is digital because it's quicker, it's easier. You guys don't have the space to keep all the cells and boards and all that other stuff. But in your role specifically, do you do as much, or do you do any of the art at this point when you're in the supervisory role?
At first, when we had just begun, I had time to do that. But when we got fully ramped up, I just had time just to kind of draw over people's stuff and work in flicks, so I could check on people's work as long as they uploaded it, and I would give feedback that way. So yeah, I did miss that because I do love drawing. So that I would say would be the downside of supervising, because it's kind of a management job more than anything.
Now, if you had your pick of the specific job or title or what you wanted to do on a day-to-day basis, would you stick with storyboards, or did you actually like doing this but you wouldn't want to do it as much? What do you prefer?
I love doing storyboards, so if I did it again, I would have to have a smaller team, I think, so that I would be able to do more storyboarding.
No.
Because I mean, people managing is great, but it's an entirely different job.
Yeah, it's a different muscle you got to flex, and if you're not efficient with it, it's a little bit difficult because most of the time people see it for a little bit, but like, I kind of just want to go and do what got me to dance. I love drawing, I love animating, I love doing this stuff. So it's interesting to see like what people kind of go towards in their path, or where they want to end with their career and shit like that. So as we start to wind down, I try to hit not so much every topic that you guys have ever done, but specific aspect. Now with Toomey, I got to admit, because he brought it up a couple times during the episode, he's like, "Man, I like how we're jumping all over the place here." I was like, "Shit!" I was high as fuck. I had smoked a couple joints before, and he was drinking a couple beers, so I was trying to keep it in. And that episode was right after I did all three of the voice actors for the Ed Boys, which was it was a hurricane of just laughter and good times, like seeing those guys all light up when all three of them, because it wasn't supposed to be all three of them. It was only supposed to be Matt and Sam. But one of the fans of the shows found out that I was having those two on, messaged Tony, and then Tony messaged me because I messaged him, and then Tony came on and surprised everybody. So it was a wild show. So after that, I kind of needed to come down just a little bit before I talked to me. So I was trying to get everybody's, like, all the hits, I guess, of everybody's career. And sometimes it's difficult because some of the people I've talked to have been doing this for like 30, 40 years. So trying to cover somebody's entire career in 1 hour or 2 hours, depending on how long we go, is almost impossible. I mean, if we only talk like 30 seconds on each topic you guys did, then maybe, but half the time I like seeing where that's why it's called What's in My Head podcast, because something will come up like, oh, you got your hair cut by somebody that pretends to be a pirate when they're not at work, or they pretend to cut hair as a pirate. I was like, I want to fucking know about that guy. I want to know, or that girl, I want to know what's going on with them. I want to talk to them too. So obviously we couldn't hit everything you did. But as you sit back in your chair right now and you look back at everything you've done, is there one or two, and this isn't to say, you're shitting on any of your other projects you've worked on, but is there one or two, shows, movies, or, you said you did some advertising, correct? Is there one or two, projects that you specifically worked on that you absolutely felt like, this was the best I gave, I put my heart out here and it shows in this artwork? Is there one or two that you would pick?
Well, I mean, for sure the Ed's show was where I felt like I belonged for the first time, and I gave it my all, of course, because it was the start of my storyboard career, basically. But I don't know if I was the top of my game at that point, because I was just learning.
Yeah.
But something I do want to mention, before I did that, I did Silverwing, Dragons and Silverwing at a different company, and that was my very first foray into storyboarding. be a revision artist. About a month and a half ago, I got some fan mail from a little girl
Mm-hmm.
who had found me. Um, and she had drawn a picture of Silverwing
Yeah.
and found me and mailed it to my company. And I got that. And I was like, oh, I could finish my career right now because this is like, I don't even know how she's watching Silverwing.
Yeah.
But she said, you know, I'm a big fan, and she drew me this lovely. So I drew her a picture back
Mm-hmm.
and sent it to her, and she has since drawn me another one. But I think that feeling is just so rewarding, you know, that somebody actually reached out and said thank you for that. Such a long time ago,
Yeah.
you know, that I'd done something like that. So I guess stuff like that is highlights
Mm-hmm.
in my career when I hear stuff like that. But yeah, I'm proud of the work that I've done on Addams Family for
Yeah.
sure.
Now, if you now this is specifically a question I like asking this one because it's a huge hypothetical. But is there any property out there? Is there any, you know, whether it's a book, a movie, a cartoon series that has already been done? Is there something out there that you would absolutely love to be a part of if hypothetically they ever greenlit it? You can say Munsters if you want. I wouldn't. But is there one out there that you would absolutely just die to work on?
I do like moral oral.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Raven, actually, she's another one you should get on the show.
Okay.
Raven Mollisey. She showed me that it's a puppet.
Okay.
Puppet animation, and it's called Moral Oral. And if that ever came around, I would love to work on something like that because it's such a weird, dark story.
Yeah.
And I tend to gravitate to that kind of thing, which is why I loved working on Addams Family too.
Yeah.
I like dark humor,
Mm-hmm.
basically. But yeah, if that ever came out for sure. I guess Monsters, yeah.
Oh man,
that's dark too.
That's the one I'm hoping for. There was something about it that I just absolutely love. I don't know what it was. It was probably just something that I would watch with my grandpa because he's the one that really instilled in me at a young age like the fun of television shows and movies and stuff like that. I mean, he was such a cool dude. I remember the first time I ever saw The Karate Kid, and we're sitting there, and he lived in West Virginia. He was a Boilermaker, and it's the part where Daniel Son's up on the couch, and he's not up on the couch. I'm up on the couch, but he's up on the thing. He's trying to do the crane kick for the first time, right? And then my grandpa looks at me and he goes, "Hey, I bet you can't do that crane kick." And I was like, "I can do it." I'm like 5, 6, 7 years old, somewhere. I'm really young. I'm spending the summer with him and my grandma in West Virginia. And I didn't realize my grandpa was a big joker. He would pull pranks and stuff like that. And his name was Ronnie. And I didn't realize he had a pillow right behind him, right? So he had it locked and loaded. So I'm up on the couch and I'm doing the crane kick. And as I'm doing the crane kick, I'm switching my leg. And he takes that pillow and he hits me in the legs because he's just trying to, he's trying to knock me back on the couch, trying to scare me. And what happened was it hit me in the legs. My legs got tangled up. So I take this huge fall, hit the table, hit the ground, right? So I start crying. He's like, shh, you're going to get me in trouble. You're going to get yourself in trouble. You're going to get Juanita in here. She's going to yell at me. I was like, I tell you what, if you stop crying, I'll get you a pizza. And my tears stopped like that. I was a fat kid from a young age. And so it was the first, like I said, he was such a cool dude. And I missed the hell out of him. He actually passed away like 3 hours before my first son was born. So he never got to meet my son. But that same love of television and movies that, not so much that he instilled in me, but he opened my mind to. And it was like some of those movies I probably shouldn't have watched. I mean, we were watching Goodfellas at like the age of 7. And yeah, for the longest time, I wanted to be in the mafia because I thought, because he turned it off right after they blew up the car. He's like, well, you're too young for this shit. He turned it off. And it was like the only part I knew about the mafia was they got to eat really good food. They got to play cool cards and dominoes. Nobody messed with them. They got to wear cool suits. I was like, holy shit, I want to do that. And then it wasn't until I read John Gotti's book, Asked My Mother What a Colombian Necktie Was, that I found out what the real mafia was like. So it was an interesting growing up experience with him. Like I said, he was such a cool fucking guy, man. I miss the hell out of him. But is there anything that you would like to say to the fans? I mean, where can fans go to find you if they want to say, hey, I really loved your work? Obviously, this little girl found you, and I love that you drew her a picture and sent it back. That is such a beautiful thing that I wish more people knew and more people did, right? But where can fans come and say, hey, I love your work. I love to see what you're doing. Where can they find, what are you doing now?
Well, I'm on Instagram. I don't post very often,
Okay.
unfortunately. I'm terrible for that. Tumi is so much better than me. Um, but but yeah, Instagram. I have a blog spot too. That I
Okay.
don't post too much. I'm sorry. I yeah. I just you can watch my shows
There you
basically.
go. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
there you
perfect.
go.
It's
Yeah,
perfect. This has been a real fun chat. Corey, thank you again for setting this one up. I really had fun here.
yeah. Thank you.
She ran, I've
It's
been Julian. This has been the What's in My Head podcast. And this has been another piece of your childhood. Thank you guys so much and goodbye.